I'm Julia, a level 3 qualified early years educator. But if you've been watching my family videos for a while, you'll know I don't actually work in an early years setting anymore. And honestly, that's not great. The sector's desperate for educators as we face a huge staffing crisis, and even more funded hours have just been promised to parents and carers. So why am I not running back to nursery?
Julia, you didn't hear? The DfE is already now proposing changes to the EYFS that are meant to help settings cope with the staffing crisis and encourage more staff into the sector. Should be good news, right?
Tell me about it.
Well, let's see. So the main things that are under consultation are first about qualification requirements for ratios. So they're asking whether potentially these could be not applicable outside of peak working hours. Second, the proposal to remove the requirement for level 3 early educators to hold a level 2, so in GCSE or equivalent, maths qualification. Instead, this requirement would only apply to managers. And finally, they're proposing that you'd no longer be required to have at least half of all your other staff qualified to level 2. Plus, they're introducing this experience-based route for educators to gain approved status to work within staff-to-child ratios so that, and quote, otherwise suitable educators who don't hold an approved level 3 qualification would have a path to gaining approved status without having to do a new qualification. So yeah, maybe not exactly a home run. What do you think?
And this is on top of the change to ratios for 2-year-olds, which was confirmed in the spring budget.
Yeah. So come on, Jules, what do you think?
Look, I've worked in the early years a long time, and I've met some phenomenal educators, both qualified and unqualified, including apprentices and trainees that I was actually lucky enough to teach. Certain qualifications don't immediately make you a great educator, and not having maths and English GCSEs doesn't mean that you're going to be a bad educator. In fact, raising those requirements just a few years ago actually prevented new educators from coming into the sector. However, if these changes were designed to remove barriers to recruitment into the sector, surely the best way to have done that would have been to improve wages, reduce stress, increase respect. Instead of just allowing more educators in, we could have chosen instead to improve the conditions for the amazing educators we already had in the sector, or tempt the staff who've left back. It's not that you need to know trigonometry to teach toddlers, but that we could have done so many other more positive things to support educators into the sector instead. In fact, this is where the experienced base route seems actually like a great addition to these ideas. I've worked with an amazing educator who'd been in the sector for so long that her qualification was no longer valid, despite all those years working with children, and she had more experience than the rest of us put together, but she didn't count in ratios.
I think I'm with you. Overall, you can pick apart the individual parts of this proposal, and it's not all horrid. As you say, we don't need educators to be the top academic performers. But I think my biggest concern is with the message these changes send. Combined with the ratios, the focus on childcare and not early education, it sends the message that all we need is more bodies in the sector, regardless of their aptitude or skills. It's not like there's anything in these proposals to entice already qualified staff back from Aldi, is there?
Not really. If anything, the job might even be harder.
So let's get into the specifics. What about this possibility of ratios not being applicable outside of peak hours?
Well, for a lot of settings, that's when pick-up and drop-off is happening. So when I first started working in a setting, completely unqualified, those were some of the most challenging times. Children are coming and going, you have to make sure everyone's going home with the right bag and the right wellies and the right adult. And if there was a conversation to be had about a child, that was usually when it happened.
Right, and I know from talking to plenty of family customers that one of the huge benefits of using any sort of technology is that it saves those conversations at the start and the end of the day for broaching difficult topics or talking deeply about a child's development. I'm not sure it's exactly the time that you want less well-qualified staff in the room.
Exactly. Back before I was qualified, I was more than happy to let my level 3 qualified room manager take those conversations. It can be tricky, sensitive, and really busy as everyone's coming or going, and you really need all hands on deck.
I think overall it's starting to look a little like these ministers might not have stepped into an actual setting in a little while.
that actually brings me to my final point about these changes. It feels like there's not a great deal of understanding about what educators actually do all day. We're not the lifeguards standing on the edge and monitoring the pool to make sure no one drowns. We're also the instructors in the water teaching children how to swim. Fewer qualified educators to spread the pedagogical load could mean even more responsibility for the ones who are. So not only are you the lifeguard and the swimming teacher, you're also mentoring and teaching other people how to be lifeguards and swimming instructors.
And after all the work that the sector's been doing to upskill, gain respect, and be seen as the actual educators they are, removing qualification requirements could make it seem that they don't matter that much, and they do. So don't get me wrong, I can totally see the logic in removing barriers to entering the sector, but I also know how important and empowering continuous professional development, training, and becoming qualified are, not just for those staff, but ultimately for the children they're educating. And there's something that we absolutely should not be taking away, because children deserve an early years sector of professionals.
Exactly. But we're curious to hear about how you feel about it, so drop us a comment and let's talk early years. Bye!